Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Grammy-Winning Multi-Instrumentalist and composer Nicholas Payton. We talked to him the day his new 2021 CD, Smoke Sessions, came out on October 29, 2021. This veteran New Orleans-raised musician got to see his long-cherished dream of leading a session with Ron Carter on bass to reignite the chemistry of the album he'd fallen in love with decades before. He also invited the great George Coleman to contribute to a pair of tunes. We also talked about a prolific career that he has spent in music and as an artist who has opened on a multitude of subjects like music, race, politics, and life in America. Dig this interview.
Joe Domino, Neon Jazz Radio.
Hey, how you doing, Joe?
Hey, I'm good, man. Thanks for taking a minute out. I appreciate it.
No problem.
First and foremost, I just want to kind of ask you about, you have a brand new album coming out, and this has been a very strange time on planet Earth. With everything that's gone on, there's been no live shows, very few live shows. How does it feel for you to be able to put out new material and have that chance to really pick up live shows again?
Well, actually, the album was just released today. I haven't stopped being productive recording-wise. I've most likely released the world's first COVID quarantine album, Quarantine with Nick. I dropped that March 28th, 2 weeks after the formal lockdown. I released another album like a month later called Maestro Rhythm King, dropped a couple singles throughout. So the recording thing was actually always pretty active for me. I also did a weekly live Thursday night streaming thing for about 6 months up until fall of 2020. Recording-wise, I've always been quite active. Live gigs is just something that I've began to pick up with, like more road work, actually. But otherwise, I just delved into what I could do, which was recording.
During this time, what did you learn about yourself that maybe you didn't realize before that's going to make you stronger now as you head out and do more live shows?
That I'm more of an introvert than I thought. I knew I was always, a bit of an introvert. An introvert extrovert, as my job requires me to be in front of people. But really, I derive energy perhaps more from within than from without. I think it just really heightened my focus and caused me to go within even deeper. And now, at this point, I just feel like my creativity and musicianship, even though I was super productive before all of this, I feel even more amped up now to be more creative, and I think it caused a lot of growth, both personally and professionally.
Your album comes out today, Smoke Sessions. Do you do anything special on album release days? How does today feel for you to have an album come out?
Not anything particularly special. I'll probably post something about it just to let folks know that today is the formal day of release. But otherwise, still in here working and practicing just like every other day.
With this particular album, it's a wonderful album. I've had a good chance to listen to it. What are you hoping the fans that download or buy this album get from this? What do you want them to feel from this album?
Joe, I put all my work into the creative process on the front end. Once it's released out into the world, in some sense, it's not mine anymore. It's up to the people to decide how, if they wish to receive it, how people perceive a project and take it in, if they will. To some degree, none of my business. I can't gauge that factor. I just hope that people will listen and accept with open ears, enjoy the ride as much as we had creating it.
So I'm curious, going back to the very beginnings of your life, what gave you the jazz bug? What brought this love of the craft into you? Was it a musician? How did all this begin?
As you may have heard, Joe, I'm not a fan of that word jazz. I prefer the term Black American music. But how I got initiated into the music was through my parents, both of whom were musicians. My dad played bass and sousaphone, was part of a lot of early New Orleans R&B classics like Lee Dorsey working on a coal mine or Aaron Neville, Tell It Like It Is, and also was equally adept, if not more, in the more straight-ahead trad New Orleans scene and more modern styles. My mom is a former operatic singer and a classical pianist. So I grew up not only in New Orleans, which is quite a wellspring of creative and very culturally relevant music. Is kind of where all this started. Directly in my household, I had the benefit of parents who were accomplished musicians and are. My mom's still around, so that's how I got my start.
What was the first live show that you saw that really blew you away?
I mean, I was going to shows when I was in the womb, you know?
Yeah.
So it would be too, I can't ever remember music not being a part of my life. I do remember just being a toddler and crawling around on the floor at, looking at some of the world's greatest musicians right in the comfort of my own living room. But to me, they were just like family, like sort of uncles and aunts, so forth. And it wouldn't be till years later that I understood the magnanimity of it all, of, seeing people like Professor Longhair right in my house, who was just, was friends with my dad to me. And then years later, I discovered how great and masterful all these people who were coming by were.
What have you learned over the years from the legends and luminaries that you've been around that you, in turn, have used to teach younger players that you get on the bandstand with?
Well, I guess the biggest thing is exactly that it's a continuum, and that we pass on what we learned from our elders. That's how the music stays alive. And to be a part of such a lineage is an important mantle to take up, which is why I've been such a vocal champion of doing my part to try to protect the music and the culture, so that the ideals and the very fundamental principles remain intact. And that's not to say that the music shouldn't grow and change with the times and evolve. That's also a part of the tradition. The tradition has always been that these foundational elements are the backbone of what makes all of this come together. So been committed to helping preserve that in very tangible ways over the years. Most recently, I've begun teaching at Berklee College of Music in Boston, where, I impart all the things I've learned from the masters, which are too numerous to even recount. I would accredit pretty much everything that I've learned about this music through my time and tutelage with the elders. And the way I pay them back is to ensure that other future generations, with whom many of whom are no longer here, to impart that it's incumbent upon me to share what they shared with me.
So you have mentioned the word evolution a few times, and you've always done that in your career. You've always stayed relevant throughout a pretty long career. How have you done that? How have you maintained that integrity and that evolution in your career as you move forward?
It's just a part of life and growth. I don't really think about it too much, My music changes and evolves as I change and evolve. I think the problem becomes is that people tend to be afraid of change, which I feel like the artist doesn't have or shouldn't have that luxury of being comfortable in that sense, that our life's work should be in the taking of risks and the breaking down of false societal constructs and boundaries, which serve to keep us apart and serve to make the art form stagnant. I got into this because of that daring nature of the music, to be on the edge. It can be a daunting task, but to me, I knew what I was getting in when I signed up for it. I feel like it's creative suicide to not allow space for growth and change. And not only your music, but as a person, artists should be committed to being better every day.
What is it that you like the best about being a musician? Every day you wake up, you have the chance to practice and perform and make something that makes a lot of people happy. What's the most pleasing part of this life for you, being a musician?
I think to know that you can impact people's lives and hopefully enrich it in a positive way is perhaps the greatest gift.
So let's say tonight you have a dream and you run into your younger self around the time that you were starting out to become a professional. And you could give your younger self one piece of advice, and this is by no means a regret question. It's more of the wisdom that you've accumulated over your life. What would you tell your younger self?
to practice. I don't think I realized the benefit of practicing boring scales and etudes every day until I was about 30. The idea that if you just play these exercises over and over again, you'll be better didn't dawn on me until, well into my career. I would tell my younger self, who didn't used to like to indulge in those tedious activities, to do so. Wish I had gotten an earlier jump on that part of it.
Now that we're returning to the stage, and fans are going back, musicians are going back, what do you hope we all realize? Maybe a new revelation or a new just wisdom that we get from the power of live music as we return now?
That it shouldn't be taken for granted, that which we thought would be here and we'd have access to that all the time, that it's quite possible that life circumstances can create a situation where you don't have access to go out and listen to live music. So I just hope fans and artists alike strengthen and fortify their appreciation of nothing is in life is guaranteed. We should appreciate and treasure and value the art of being able to make and share this music, because it's not necessarily a given.
Everyone has a perception of who you are, your family, your friends, your fans, your students. But ultimately, you live your life. You have a perception of who you are. Who do you think you are?
Man, that's so many things. I don't think we have enough time to say all the different things that I am. I can say though that I'm not too much concerned with how I'm perceived as much as I am about what I know myself to be. And even that is not something I'm too attached to, because that changes every day. As I said earlier, I'm on a path and a mission to grow and to challenge myself to do things that I didn't think were possible for me to do. And the moment I can't do that anymore is the moment I cease to be alive. So I'm not even the same person I was a week ago, so much less a month or a year or years ago. I'm constantly evolving and changing. And that's not to say that I'm better than anyone else. It's just that to me, my life is about being committed to exactly that. That's my purpose here, to strive to be better the next day than I was the day before. Yeah. So, I say that to say, to who I am is even though there's foundational things that never change, the overarching thing is that I strive to zero in on the bullseye and be a bit better.
Nicholas, thank you for taking some time out today to talk about the new album and your life in music, man. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, anytime.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in New Orleans, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that tasty music. And thanks to Nicholas for his time, music, and stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Neon Jazz on the iTunes Store. Visit Neon Jazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.